Welcome to Washington Today from Monday, October 6th, 2025. I'm Gary Sterkoff. Thank you for joining us. The Senate is back in Washington today without a deal to end the government shutdown that's now in its sixth day. Senators will be voting for the fifth time to advance two competing short-term government funding bills. The Democrats' proposal would fund the government to end the end of the month and extend health care tax credits. The Republicans' bill would extend funding through November 21st. That bill has already passed the House. Meanwhile, House Republican leaders have canceled votes for a second straight week, with members back home in their districts. We'll play you what Senate leadership, House Speaker Mike Johnson, and the White House said about all this coming up. The legal showdown over White House efforts to deploy National Guard troops into U.S. cities continues. The state of Illinois and the city of Chicago sued the Trump administration today to stop the effort. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson signed an executive order declaring city property ice-free zones. All of this comes a day after a federal judge temporarily blocked the deployment of National Guard troops to Portland, Oregon. We'll play you part of what the White House, Governor Pritzker, and Mayor Johnson had to say coming up. Now, that Senate vote scheduled for 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Semaphore News Congressional Bureau Chief Burgess Everett reported that Senate Republican leader John Thune says he's not shifting strategies and that he'll talk to Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, quote, if it's useful to do so. Burgess Everett quoting Senator Thune saying, we want to get this thing moving again, and hopefully at some point that becomes enough of a priority for some of his members, and they'll find a way to get to yes. But it sounds like they're still stuck at the moment. Here's what Senator Thune said this afternoon during his Leader Time remarks.
Mr. President, Democrats own this. They own any lapse in funding for critical food aid programs, just as they own every other negative effect of the shutdown. Because let's remember, Mr. President, the only reason the government is shut down is because Democrats refused to accept a clean, nonpartisan funding extension. A clean, nonpartisan funding extension. We didn't ask Democrats to swallow any new Republican policies. We didn't ask them to swallow any partisan riders. We simply asked them to agree to a clean, nonpartisan bill. The same kind of bill, Mr. President, I might add, that they voted for 13 times. 13 times during the Biden administration. The Democrats said no. And I should note, Mr. President, that you don't have to take my word for it on the facts of the bill. Republicans aren't the only ones pointing out that this is a clean CR. Here's what the president of the Teamsters Union had to say the other day, and I quote, "A shutdown will hurt working people, period. Senators should pass the House-passed clean, short-term funding bill," end quote. Senators should pass the House-passed clean, short-term funding bill, end quote. Again, that from the president of the Teamsters Union. Or, you could take the word of a mainstream journalist who recently noted, and I quote, "In a vacuum, this CR would get almost every Democrat vote." It just would. This is a clean CR that has no partisan riders, extends a bunch of programs that are Democrat priorities. It's clean. It's clean, Mr. President. So to summarize, Democrats have shut down the government because they refuse to accept a clean, nonpartisan bill. And why are they refusing to accept it? After all, as I mentioned, they supported similar bills 13 times during the Biden administration. The reason that they refuse to accept it is that Democrats still cannot get over the fact that the American people elected President Trump. And when their far left base demanded a showdown with the president, Democrats fell in line. And now it's the American people who are suffering the consequences.
Senate Republican leader John Thune earlier on the floor. Here's what Senator Schumer had to say.
Democrats want to deal with the health care problem now. A recent poll by KFF shows that 80% of Americans want to extend the ACA tax credits, including 60% of MAGA Republicans. That's where the people are. A CBS poll also found that 75% of Americans don't think the administration is focused enough on lowering costs. Well, lowering health care premiums would be one of the very best ways to lower costs, because those costs are going through the roof. Many estimates show the average American would pay $1,000 more for health care. Listen to this. If you're a couple, 55-year-old couple who makes $80,000 a year, your premiums could go up $25,000 a year. How is anyone going to deal with that issue? Why is Johnson waiting? But yet again, Speaker Johnson and MAGA Republicans continue to lie and change the subject. Donald Trump does the same thing. The Speaker today once again lied that Democrats' proposal would provide health care benefits to undocumented immigrants. He even cited a page number and section within our proposal he says supposedly proves the point. Of course our proposal doesn't say that. As the Sunday show talk commentators Johnson sent down with this weekend pointed out, and he had no real rebuttal. Saying that Democrats' proposal provides health insurance to undocumented immigrants is plain and simple a blatant lie. It was a lie yesterday. It's a lie today. It'll be a lie tomorrow. Nothing in our proposal, not even the page the Speaker keeps citing as changes that, as fact checkers have repeatedly pointed out, independent fact checkers, not Democrats, not Republicans, just experts. Undocumented immigrants are not eligible for Medicaid, Medicare, or ACA credits under current law or under the Democratic continuing resolution proposal. It's been the law for decades. Instead, here's what Democrats want to do. We want to reverse the devastating cuts to American health care that Republicans passed in their big, ugly bill. We want to extend the ACA tax credits that lower costs for eligible Americans. These are the plain facts. But Speaker Johnson and Republicans don't want to deal with the facts. They don't want to talk about health care because they know the American people are appalled by their health care policies. So instead, they lie, change the subject. And Speaker Johnson and the House Republicans would rather duck out of town than come into session and do their jobs. You know, when Leader Jeffries and I met with the president, he, of all people, seemed at least to somewhat appreciate the immense harm of letting these ACA credits expire. Of course, we had to walk the president through it first because it seemed he had no clue of the crisis before our meeting. But frankly, what should happen now is this. The president should lean on Speaker Johnson to relent on his extreme refusal to negotiate. It's not a sustainable position for the Speaker to literally shut the entire House down and not do anything to solve this crisis. Again, why wait? Democrats are ready to solve this now. We urge Donald Trump to get Speaker Johnson and our Republican colleagues to come to the table with Senator Jeffries and I, negotiate and address this problem and fix it once and for all.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, again, that Senate vote scheduled for 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The Washington Post reporting today that the shutdown has sidelined 750,000 federal workers and forced many others to work without pay. It has almost completely shuttered agencies such as the Environmental Protection Agency and the Education Department. From Al Jazeera, the indirect talks between Israeli and Palestinian negotiators began in Egypt on Monday afternoon over finalizing a deal based on President Trump's Gaza ceasefire plan. The talks are expected to last a few days. CNN is reporting mediators from the U.S., Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey are in the meetings. The president was asked about it in the Oval Office late this afternoon.
Mr. President, there's negotiations happening with your team in Egypt right now over your proposed peace plan. It was reported by Axios over the weekend that you had a call with Prime Minister Netanyahu where you told him to stop being so negative and to take the win when it came to Hamas's response to that. Is that true? And
no, it's not true. He's been very positive. He's been very positive on the deal. Everybody is. I think every nation is. We have just about every nation working on this deal and trying to get it done. Something that you could say 3,000 years if you look at it in certain ways, or you could say centuries, but this is a deal that incredibly everyone just came together. They all came together. No, Israel's been great. They've all been good, Caitlin.
And in the negotiations, do you have any any red lines in terms of Hamas disarming and whatnot?
No, I have red lines. If certain things aren't met, we're not going to do it. But I think we're doing very well, and I think Hamas has been agreeing to things that are very important.
Now, the president was also asked about this evening's Senate vote.
If the vote today fails in the Senate, will that trigger layoffs?
It could. At some point it will. And, the Democrats are the ones that started this. And if you think about it, it's about health care to a large extent. It's about we want great health care for people. We don't want to give the money away to other people that come pouring into our country. And they've already poured because nobody's coming into our country. Now we have the border totally stopped. In fact, numbers we just announced again, we're at another 0. So we have 0 for 4 months in a row. 0 people coming into our country illegally. That's a pretty good number. I'm not sure even I can believe that, Doug, if you want to know the truth. 0. We went from millions of people to 0, but it's pretty close to that number. And the way you stop them is not to give away, not to announce that you're giving everybody free health care, free this and that. But what that does is it affects the American people because the American people are unable to get good health care. Obamacare has been a wreck, as you know, and to do that, we have to keep it propped up and do the best you can with it. It's a mess. But a lot of things are going on in that. We talk about Hamas. Now we talk about negotiations that we have going on right now. We have a negotiation going on right now with the Democrats that could lead to very good things.
What kind of
and I'm talking about good things with regard to health care.
Are you speaking with Democratic leaders? What kind of negotiations?
Well, I don't want to say that. But we are speaking with the Democrats, and some very good things could happen with respect to health care.
Would you make a deal with them on the ACA subsidies?
If we made the right deal, I'd make a deal, sure.
So you would make
you have right now subsidies. You have subsidies. That's the problem with Obamacare. The subsidies are so much. It's billions and billions of dollars is being wasted. And we can have a much better health care than we have right now. And we're talking to them. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen because this has also been going on, not for 3,000 years, but it's been going on for a long time. But, yeah, we're talking to the Democrats.
You would work to make a deal with them on...
I'd like to see a deal made for great health care. Yeah, I want to see great health. I'm a Republican, but I want to see health care much more so than the Democrats.
So, Mr. President, on all of this, as you know, the American people are experiencing a lot of pain with any kind of government shutdown. And while you're dealing with Democrats, and of course Republicans are standing their ground, what is your message directly to the American people who may encounter some of this pain and despair? Yeah. How do you give them hope?
Well, up till now, there hasn't been a great deal of pain. There could be a great deal of pain, but up till now, there hasn't been. I will say this, just hang in there because I think a lot of good things are going to happen. That's all I can say. I mean, I think a lot of good things could happen, and that could also pertain to health care.
You can see all of the president's statement at cspan.org and on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app. Now, as we said, there are no votes scheduled in the House of Representatives today, but House Speaker Mike Johnson was at the Capitol. He talked about Senate Democrats' position.
Why did Chuck Schumer change his tune, and why is he now saying exactly the opposite of what he said 6 months ago? A picture's worth 10,000 words, okay? This is a copy of the Washington Examiner. Zoom in on that, all right? If you can't see this at home, I just had this on my desk on a big stack, and I found it. This is published March of 2025, March 26 exactly. It's a picture of Chuck Schumer looking very upset, very angry, walking out with a box, and all the House Democrats depicted their character, saying that he's an enemy of democracy. Why is he an enemy of democracy? Because the far left base in the Democrat Party has turned on Chuck Schumer because he did the responsible thing, get the lights on. Why? Because they want him to show a fight against President Trump. So Schumer doesn't want to be in this situation again. So he said, my gosh, he got his staff together and he got the far left wing of the party. He said, what do you want? What do you want me to fight on? So they created a red herring. A red herring is a distraction. They decided that they would pick a fight on health care. Well, let me look right into the camera and tell you very clearly. Republicans are the ones concerned about health care. Republicans are the party working around the clock every day to fix health care. This is not talking points for us. We've done it. A big part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cut, was to fix health care. Health care is broken in America. It's too expensive. The quality of care needs to rise. We need more access for more people, and we have lots of ideas to do that. But that issue is for debate in the next 3 months. It always was. We have members working on that. The tax credit, the subsidy you've heard about that expires December 31st, there's a lot of thoughtful debate and discussion that has already been going on about that and will go on about that. But that's a December 31 issue. So Chuck Schumer is scrambling. He has to have an issue. None of their policies are very popular, so they decided to lob onto health care. And he decided to claim to all of you that is the issue with government funding. It is not. Those are two totally separate things.
House Speaker Mike Johnson. Here's NBC News senior congressional correspondent Scott Wong with more on what this standoff is about.
The big battle has been over the ACA subsidies, Obamacare subsidies. As I mentioned before, they are set to expire December 31st. Now, to take a step back, these are subsidies, enhanced subsidies that were implemented during the Biden administration in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. This was a way to try to attract new people to enroll in Obamacare, to strengthen that program. And it was successful. There were millions of new people that signed up for Obamacare with these tax credits to help them pay for it. And so Democrats were able to renew these subsidies in 2022 under the Inflation Reduction Act. They expire now 3 years later in December 31st, 2025. Republicans have said, we are happy to have that conversation, but let's do that after you vote to reopen the government. We want to see reforms. Many Republicans do want to extend those subsidies, but they think significant changes need to happen in terms of eligibility. Democrats, of course, are saying, we want to have that conversation right now. We will supply the votes for the government to reopen, but we need a firm commitment. We need something in writing. We need to sit down at the table and have these talks now. And so that's where the standoff lies in terms of, it's really about strategic tactics, about which should come first, the talks or the vote to reopen the government.
He also talked about why both sides seem so dug in.
Both parties believe that they're winning the argument, right? Democrats are saying that, look, there's a health care crisis around the corner. These Obamacare subsidies that we've been talking about for many days now are expiring at the end of the year, December 31st. Republicans are saying, look, in the House, we've already passed a clean CR, continuing resolution, to fund the government and in this case, reopen the government. We have done our jobs. All we need are 5 more Democratic senators. And so both parties feel like they are winning the argument, and that's why nobody is coming to the negotiating table. We don't know what's going to happen after these votes are expected to fail. They could keep, Leader Thune could keep bringing the same bills up over and over again later this week. That's one possibility. Or there's a possibility he brings up no votes, and we just continue to be in an impasse.
NBC News senior congressional correspondent Scott Wong on this morning's Washington Journal, and we heard him mention just 5 Democratic votes are needed for the Senate to move on the House-passed funding bill. The Hill's Al Weaver reports those Senate Democratic votes that Republicans are working on changing. Gary Peters of Michigan, Jean Shaheen and Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire, John Ossoff of Georgia, and Dick Durbin of Illinois. You can see the Senate live and all of our coverage on cspan.org and C-SPAN Now. Of course, the Senate's always live on C-SPAN 2. You're listening to Washington Today.
Get C-SPAN wherever you are with C-SPAN Now, our free mobile video app that puts you at the center of democracy, live and on demand. Keep up with the day's biggest events with live streams of floor proceedings and hearings from the U.S. Congress, White House events, the courts, campaigns, and more from the world of politics, all at your fingertips. Catch the latest episodes of Washington Journal. Find scheduling information for C-SPAN's TV and radio networks, plus a variety of compelling podcasts. The C-SPAN Now app is available at the Apple Store and Google Play. Download it for free today. C-SPAN, Democracy Unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today. Over the weekend, a federal memo obtained by CBS News revealed up to 300 members of the Illinois National Guard would be federalized and deployed to protect federal property and government personnel performing federal functions in Chicago. And today, the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago announced they are suing the Trump administration over that deployment. In the suit, Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul wrote, "Defendants' deployment of federalized troops to Illinois is patently unlawful. Plaintiffs ask this court to halt the illegal, dangerous, and unconstitutional federalization of members of the National Guard of the United States, including both the Illinois and Texas National Guard." Illinois Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker talked about it this afternoon.
Donald Trump's deranged depiction of Chicago as a hellhole, a war zone, and the worst and most dangerous city in the world was just complete BS. He clearly has decided to declare war on a great American city that has the lowest homicide rate in 60 years, in a state that has record employment and near record tourism. And he's done it for some unspoken reason. I spent the days and weeks following that out and about in our communities, in Bronzeville, in Austin, in Little Village, Berwyn, South Shore, and others, walking and talking and listening to real Chicagoans and local business owners, something Donald Trump, Greg Bovino, Tom Homan, and Kristi Noem have never bothered to do. No insurrections, no invasions. The folks in the neighborhoods do not want armed troops marching in their streets. When it comes to public safety, they want civilian law enforcement when they need them, and jobs, and after-school programs for kids in the neighborhoods. They do not want Donald Trump to occupy their communities. Then the Trump invasion began. Since ICE and CBP announced their operations on September 8th, our people have been subjected to violence, intimidation, and harassment. They have struck fear in our communities, including notably fear in the hearts of U.S. citizens. Trump and the thuggery that his agents have brought has actively made us less safe.
Illinois Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker. From NBC5 in Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson signed an executive order today that will prohibit federal immigration authorities from using city-owned property as staging areas, processing locations, or operations bases for civil immigration enforcement activities. At an event this morning, Mayor Johnson talked about how he thinks federal immigration enforcements are affecting the city.
They are taking police resources that should be in our neighborhoods, serving Chicagoans, and diverting them to deal with the chaos that they are causing. We need ICE out of our city so that we can continue to focus on the strategies that have been working to drive violent crime down. These actions tell us a simple truth. If we allow this administration to take away due process for anyone, we will allow them to take away due process for everyone. They told us that this was about the worst of the worst. In reality, they are going after anyone who objects to families being ripped apart and community members being disappeared. ICE lies and people die. We cannot allow this to continue. We must take action more drastic than what we have taken before, because what we are seeing is a more radical attempt to undermine our democracy. And today we are signing an executive order aimed at reining in this out-of-control administration. The order establishes ICE-free zones. That means that city property and unwilling private businesses will no longer serve as staging grounds for these raids. Our school parking lots are not for ICE to load their weapons. They are for Chicagoans who drop their kids off to learn. Our libraries are not for ICE to prepare for a raid. They're for Chicagoans to read and relax. Our parks are not for ICE to set up checkpoints. They are for Chicagoans to play and enjoy. Private establishments can partner with us to make it clear that private property is private property, and ICE cannot enter establishments without a valid warrant. Private entities may voluntarily choose to display signage to designate their property as part of a citywide network of community spaces that stand together in affirming the safety, dignity, and belonging of all of our residents. By extending this protection beyond city-owned land, the order builds a broad civic shield that limits the reach of harmful enforcement practices. It strengthens neighborhood solidarity, and it reaffirms Chicago's role as a welcoming city. The fact is, we cannot allow them to rampage throughout our city with no checks or balances. Nobody is above the law. If we break the law, you should be held accountable. If Congress will not check this administration, then Chicago will. I know there are many Chicagoans who are disturbed by the images and the videos that they are seeing on the news and social media. There are many who are scared and shocked by what they are seeing. The truth is that we are at a tipping point. This administration is trying to divide us and pit people groups against one another. They want to divide and conquer. And as I said, in the South Shore, and this has been said very clearly, black people in one van and immigrants in another. In the face of this unprecedented threat, this moment calls for unity. Black, brown, white, Asian, young, old, north side, west side, south side, we must all pull aside our differences and defend one another, because if we allow this to continue to be unchecked, by the time we realize what's happening, it'll be too late.
Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. ABC 7 Chicago reporting that his executive order says the city will give out free signs that private landowners can post on their property to designate an ICE-free zone. You can see all of his comments and Governor Pritzker's comments at cspan.org and on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app. And in today's White House briefing, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about the National Guard deployments in Portland, Oregon, and this weekend's court decision.
Federal judge over the weekend that the president had appointed to the bench in his first term in office basically argued that he could not deploy other states' National Guards to Portland, basically said that it was untethered, his argument, to what is actually happening on the ground. Which local officials in Portland have said that the National Guard is needed there, if any?
With all due respect to that judge, I think her opinion is untethered in reality and in the law. The president is using his authority as commander-in-chief, U.S. Code 12406, which clearly states that the president has the right to call up the National Guard in cases where he deems it's appropriate. And if you look at what has happened in Portland, Oregon, for more than 100 nights, I was talking to our law enforcement team about it this morning, for more than 100 days, night after night after night, the ICE facility has been really under siege by these anarchists outside. They have been disrespecting law enforcement. They've been inciting violence. We saw, again, a guillotine rolled out in front of this federal building. And so the president wants to ensure that our federal buildings and our assets are protected. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. And ultimately, in the case in Los Angeles, that judge ruled in the Ninth Circuit, that panel of judges ruled that those troops could remain and that the president was well within his authority to do so. So we are appealing that decision. As you know, we expect a hearing on it pretty quickly, and we're very confident in the president's legal authority to do this, and we're very confident we will win on the merits of the law.
But no local officials that you can point to that have said we need the National Guard? Because I spoke to the police chief of Portland last week. He said that the president's claims just don't match up with what's happening on the ground.
I would encourage you as a reporter to go on the ground and to take a look at it for yourself, because there's been many members of the press, not press in this room, but independent journalists, some of whom we'll be inviting to the White House very soon to share their stories, because they have been in the middle of these riots and they have witnessed the anarchy that is taking place night after night. It's on video. You should play it on your show. You have a great opportunity in prime time on CNN to show your audience. Yeah, but you're probably talking to partisan Democrat officials officials who are opposed to everything this president does. You should also ask the people who live in Portland. We've actually heard from many members of the community who have said that this is complete civil disobedience. It's a mess. It's been loud. It's been troubling for neighbors in the community who are just trying to live peacefully. And these people are not there to peacefully protest. They are there to cause mayhem and havoc.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. And from KGW.com in Portland, they're reporting today that only a few of the 128 people that the FBI reported it arrested last week have been formally charged, and that those who have been charged are facing penalties from trespassing to assaulting a federal officer. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said the number of air traffic controllers calling in sick since the government shutdown began last week has seen a slight tick up. He talked about the effect the shutdown is taking on the air traffic controllers on the job today at Newark Liberty Airport.
I want to be clear. Do I think they're more stressed right now in our towers? Yes. Is our airspace unsafe? No. Right? If we think there's issues in the airspace, we will shut it down. We will close it down. We will delay. But again, it's creating a ripple effect for our controllers. Not only that, many of you know what Essential Air Service is. So Essential Air Service provides airline services to communities that normally would not get it. Right? So we give some subsidies to the federal government that in smaller communities to give them service from the airlines. That money runs out this Sunday. So there's many small communities across the country that will now no longer have the resources to make sure they have air service in their community. The number one user of this airspace is Alaska. Again, you don't have roads in Alaska. They travel by air, and a lot of these are small communities. Alaska will be impacted, but every state across the country will be impacted by the inability to provide the subsidies to airlines to service these communities. Long-standing program, bipartisan support in the House and the Senate. It's an important program, but we don't have the money for that moving forward.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. And from Reuters, National Air Traffic Controllers Association President Nick Daniels is urging the more than 13,000 members of his union to remain on the job during the government shutdown. You can see all of Secretary Duffy's statement from Newark at cspan.org and at C-SPAN Now. The Supreme Court began its new term today with 39 cases already on its docket. And in one of their first decisions, they declined to hear a challenge from convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell for her role in the Jeffrey Epstein case. Her lawyer said she should have been shielded from prosecution under a plea agreement that Jeffrey Epstein struck with federal authorities. Supreme Court justices declined to say today why they rejected the appeal, but her lawyer, David Oscar Marcus, said this fight isn't over. Serious legal and factual issues remain, and we will continue to pursue every avenue available to ensure that justice is done. Earlier today, we talked to Amy Howe from SCOTUS blog about the court's new term and one of the highest profile cases it's hearing, President Trump's tariffs.
So these are cases, one of them comes from, originally was filed in the Court of International Trade and made its way to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. And then the other one comes from a federal district court in Washington, D.C. And both of them are challenging the president's authority to impose these sweeping tariffs on virtually all goods from any country with which the United States has a trading relationship under what's known as the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. And it's a law that's about 50 years old, and no president has ever relied on this law before to impose tariffs. And so the challengers say that is part of what demonstrates that this law was not intended to allow the president to impose tariffs. It allows the president to regulate importation in times of a national emergency. And so they say, A, it doesn't refer to tariffs. I'm simplifying dramatically here, but A, it doesn't refer to tariffs. And B, there's not a national emergency just because there is a trade deficit. And then they also rely on something called the major questions doctrine, which is something that the Supreme Court has used during the Biden administration, for example, to invalidate some of the president's programs during the Biden administration. And the idea is that if Congress wanted to give the president in a statute power that would have such vast economic and political significance, it would have said so explicitly. So this is something in which the Supreme Court will hear oral arguments in November. It's not clear exactly how long it will take to get a ruling. Defending the president's authority, the Trump administration has said, among other things, that this major questions doctrine doesn't apply because this whole idea of international emergency economic powers is a major question. The president has vast powers when it comes to foreign affairs, and that the president's ability to impose these tariffs and then in the tariff negotiations that have followed really have been important in his ability to, he says, bring the country back from a precipice.
SCOTUS blog co-founder Amy Howe on Washington Journal this morning. Now, on Wednesday, we will have the oral argument in Bost v. Illinois Board of Elections. That case centers around Illinois Republican Representative Mike Bost, who sued the state back in 2022 for counting absentee ballots it received up to 2 weeks after Election Day. Our live coverage of the oral argument begins at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. You can watch it on C-SPAN 3. It will also stream live on C-SPAN Now and at cspan.org, which is also where you can find this program as a podcast. And beginning soon, all 3 C-SPAN networks will be available on YouTube TV and Hulu Plus Live TV. Our availability on these streaming platforms expands access to our unfiltered coverage of the U.S. government. We'll tell you the launch date soon, but we want to thank you for listening and watching wherever you follow C-SPAN. And for more on the stories that are shaping Washington every day, get our daily email word for word. You can go to cspan.org/connect to subscribe. I'm Gary Sterkoff. Thanks a lot for listening today to Washington Today.